Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining me today. Today's a great day to go over the true origins of Christmas. And to do this, we must start not with the Romans and Saturn, and not with the Greeks and Kronos, but instead with the ancient Celts. I know that many of you out there who would watch content on this channel would understand that Christmas is founded in astronomy, in the stars in the sky. It is an event that is solely tied to the movement of the sun. To be exact, it is the celebration of the winter solstice. The winter solstice was seen by the ancient Celts as one of the most significant times of the year. The Neolithic monuments of New Grange in Maes Howe and Orkney, Scotland are examples of burial chambers scattered throughout the Celtic nations, constructed to capture the full impact of sun's rays during these solstices. Druids, the priestly class in ancient Celtic society, celebrated the festival of Al Ben Arthuan, also known as Yule. At the time of the winter solstice, it was on this day that they ceremonially gathered mistletoe from oak trees, a custom that was later picked up by Pliny the Elder of the Romans. The name Christmas is from the Mass of Christ, Christ Mass. The actual date of the birth of Jesus is not given in the Bible. The spread of Christianity during the first millennium was aided by the new religion adapting to the ceremonies and traditions of the existing religions. At times, the early Christians also adopted existing deities to ease the transition from old beliefs to new ones. So not only did the Celts begin this reverence to this time of year by understanding that the sun was at its weakest point, its furthest point in the sky from Earth during the time period of December 21st to the 24th, they also created many symbols and traditions that were carried into modern times, like the mistletoe, but also the Yule log, which was burnt by the Celts to counter the darkness of midwinter when they thought that the sun stood still for 12 days and to bring good luck. The holly and ivy, evergreens that Celts saw as important to keep evil spirits at bay. The tree decorated with symbols of solar objects and gifts to the Celtics gods and goddesses. When the Greeks became the central civilization in the world, they expanded upon this celebration and shined a little more light on where this act of divination came from. First, I'd like to point you to a video on this channel entitled The Dawn of Man. It's a video that takes some work from Bill Cooper and expands upon it, attempting to go back even further into the origins of the mystery schools. In it, there is some very good research on a time that was written about in a historical record by numerous ancient civilizations, called the Golden Age, or the Golden Age of Kronos, the Age of Two Suns, with a U, not an O. I'll leave a link in the description and we'll speak on it briefly now. The Chronia was an Athenian festival held in honor of Cronus, or Kronos, during the first month of the Attic calendar. Kronos was the leader and youngest of the first generation of Titans, the divine descendants of Uranus, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. He overthrew his father and ruled during the mythological Golden Age, until he was overthrown by his own son, Zeus, and imprisoned in Tartarus. Cronus was usually depicted with a harp, scythe, or a sickle, which was the instrument he used to castrate and depose Uranus, his father. As mentioned, in Athens, on the 12th day of the Attic month, a festival called Chronia was held in honor of Cronus to celebrate the harvest, suggesting that, as a result of his association with the virtuous Golden Age, Cronus continued to preside as a patron of the harvest. It's also important to know that Cronus was also identified in classical antiquity with the Roman deity Saturn. Cronus was the god of agriculture. Actually, he was a Titan, but the Titans were worshipped in the same way as the gods. After he overthrew his father, he also became the god of the sky. He is also called Kronos, or Saturn. His name might come from the word chrono, which means to govern. He was also the god of time. And this authority over time and authority to govern seems to come from a time when the planet Saturn was much closer to Earth and had some sort of control over our Earth, probably due to its magnetic field being stronger, as it was supposedly much closer to Earth at some point in our past. In fact, this golden age refers to a time when the Earth produced massive amounts of abundance, but without the need for toil or work by man. It was said that plants and fruits just spontaneously grew. The Roman playwright Accius says that in the Golden Age, the earth had spontaneously supported human life, and since labor was unneeded, slavery had not existed. It was a period of thorough harmony in which hierarchical and exploitative and predatory relationships were non-existent. The story is told that Saturn may have been the Earth's primary sun, with the current sun being secondary, and that at some point Saturn was kicked or pushed or was moved from its place. And here's a picture of what is called the Saturn polar configuration, which is a theoretical graphic that pretends to show how this configuration may have looked. And so the Earth was then left with one sun, our current one. And so came the seasons and the limited amount of vegetative growth time for plants and farming as we know it today. Now, I can't go too much further into this time period, as we could go on it all day. Please check out The Dawn of Man for more on this. Many scholars have pointed to this time period, this time of two suns, and have presented many theories. First is, many astrologists and scholars believe that all star systems in the universe are binary, meaning that there are two central suns that orbit each other, or a twin star. And if you followed ancient history, you'll be amazed at how much the ancients knew about our skies. It is theorized that this is where the constellation Gemini, or the twins, came from, and hence all of the stories of brothers and twins in the Bible, and all other religions, in fact. Jacob and Esau, Cain and Abel, including the twins of Jesus and Lucifer, as the Latter-day Saints believe. And this supposed control over Earth and time, I'll point you to this black cube on Saturn. Now, I don't know what it is, but I do know that the ancients did. And they called it the Star of Remphan, or the Mark of Cain. Cain, the brother who eventually killed his sibling. And this may have something to do with that cube, or whatever that is. And it's not just the Bible, but these stories of brothers and twins are found throughout all writings from all ancient civilizations. Continuing on Christmas now. The Romans then took this celebration and added their own flair to it. They called it Saturnalia, in honor of the god Saturn, held on the 17th of December of the Julian calendar, and later expanded with festivities through to the 23rd of December. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice at the Temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum and a public banquet, followed by private gift giving, continual partying, and a carnival atmosphere that overturned Roman social norms. Gambling was permitted, and masters provided table service for their slaves, as it was seen as a time of liberty for both slaves and freedmen alike. A common custom was the election of a king of the Saturnalia, who would give orders to people, which were to be followed and preside over the merrymaking. The gifts exchanged were usually gag gifts of small figurines made of wax or pottery known as sigillaria. The poet Catullus called it the best of days. Saturnalia was the Roman equivalent to the earlier Greek holiday of Chronia. It held theological importance for some Romans who saw it as a restoration of the ancient Golden Age when the world was ruled by Saturn. The Neoplatonist philosopher Porphyry interpreted the freedom associated with Saturnalia as symbolizing the, quote, freeing of souls into immortality. In Roman mythology, Saturn was an agricultural deity who was said to have reigned over the world in the Golden Age, when humans enjoyed the spontaneous bounty of the earth without labor in a state of innocence. The revelries of Saturnalia were supposed to reflect the conditions of the lost mythical age. So lots of partying, gambling, role-playing, immoral activity, forgetting any inhibitions, and in fact even forgetting social order as slaves and slave masters alike ate, drank, and partied together. But these are the nicer stories of Saturnalia. There is a darker side, folks, as usual, when we're dealing with these people. Saturn also had a less benevolent aspect. One of his consorts was Lua, sometimes called Lua Saturni, or Saturn's Lua, and identified with Lua Mater, which means Mother of Destruction, a goddess in whose honor the weapons of enemies killed in war were burned. In sources of the 3rd century AD and later, Saturn is recorded as receiving dead gladiators as offerings during or near the Saturnalia. The offering of gladiators led to later theories that the primeval Saturn had demanded human victims. The historian Macrobius says that the god Saturn was placated with sacrificial victims consisting of men. Now, fast forwarding to more modern times, Christmas was obviously picked up by the early Christians, and it signifies the birth of Jesus Christ. Although that date, or that exact date of Jesus' birth, is never mentioned in the Bible. And if any of you out there know about Constantine and the Nicaea Council in 325 AD, you'll know that this was the time that the Roman Empire, which was at this time completely ran by the Illuminati of that time, the mystery school initiates. And since they could not put down this new secret society, as they referred to the Christians, as every time one of them was put to death, 5 more would stand up. So the Roman Empire chose to, quote, morph or merge the Roman Empire with the Vatican, making the Pope the real emperor of Rome, thus placating the Christians through deception, a tactic still in use in a big way today by these same people. Constantine, with the help of his mystery school advisors standing behind the throne, bent, twisted, and picked and chose which books would constitute the official Bible, and eventually the official history and doctrine of the church. And this was a very unfortunate event for Christianity, albeit that many may not have even known at the time. And back to Christmas. St. Nicholas of Myra was an early Christian bishop of Greek descent from the maritime city of Myra in Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, during the time of the Roman Empire. Because of his many miracles attributed to him, he is also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. St. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, prostitutes, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, unmarried people, and students in various cities and countries around Europe. Very little is known about the historical St. Nicholas. His very existence has even been seriously questioned. The earliest accounts of his life were written centuries after his death and contain many legendary elaborations. He is said to have been born in the Greek seaport of Patara, Lycia in Asia Minor, to wealthy Christian parents. In one of the earliest attested and most famous incidents from his life, he is said to have rescued 3 girls from being forced into prostitution by dropping a sack of gold coins through the window of their house each night for 3 nights, so their father could pay a dowry for each of them. Other early stories tell of him calming a storm at sea, saving 3 innocent soldiers from wrongful execution, and chopping down a tree possessed by a demon. In his youth, he is said to have had made a pilgrimage to Egypt and Palestine. Shortly after his return, he became Bishop of Myra. He was later cast into prison during the persecution of Diocletian, but was released after the accession of Constantine. And an early list makes him an attendee at the First Council of Nicaea in 325, but he is never mentioned in any writings by people who were actually at the council. Late unsubstantiated legends claim that he was temporarily defrocked and imprisoned during the council for slapping the heretic Arius. Another famous late legend tells how he resurrected 3 children who had been murdered and pickled in brine by a butcher planning to sell them as pork during a famine. His reputation evolved among the faithful, and was common for early Christian saints, and his legendary habit of secret gift-giving gave rise to the traditional model of Santa Claus, or Saint Nick. And it seems as though good old Saint Nick may have really been a good guy, if he existed. But it's hard to ever really know when one realizes who it is that has been writing our history for so long. Now, who here has heard of Krampus? Krampus is a horned, anthropomorphic figure in alpine folklore who during the Christmas season scares children who have misbehaved, assisting to St. Nicholas, who rewards the well-behaved at night with modest gifts of orange, dried fruit, walnuts, and chocolate, and bad ones with birch rod only. The origin of the figure is unclear. Some folklorists and anthropologists have postulated it as having pre-Christian origins. In traditional parades and in such events as the Krampus run, young men dressed as Krampus participate. Such events occur annually in most alpine towns. The history of the Krampus figure has been theorized as stretching back to pre-Christian alpine traditions. In a brief article discussing the figure, published in 1958, Maurice Bruce wrote, quote, "There seems to be little doubt as to his true identity, for in no other form is the full regalia of the horned god of the witches so well preserved. The birch, apart from its phallic significance, may have a connection with the initiation rites of certain witch covens, rites which entailed binding and scourging as a form of mock death." End quote. Anthropologist John J. Honigman wrote that these early practitioners of the Feast of St. Nicholas believed Krampus derived from a pagan supernatural who was assimilated to the Christian devil. The Krampus figures persisted, and by the 17th century, Krampus had been incorporated into Christian winter celebrations by pairing Krampus with St. Nicholas, and isn't that special, dear listeners? Krampus carries chains thought to symbolize the binding of the devil by the Christian church. He thrashes the chains for dramatic effect. The chains are sometimes accompanied with bells of various sizes. Of more pagan origins are the rootin, bundles of birch branches that Krampus carries and with which he occasionally swats children. The birch branches are replaced with a whip in some presentations. Sometimes Krampus appears with a sack or a basket strapped to his back. This is to cart off evil children for drowning, eating, or transportation to hell. Some of the older versions make mention of naughty children being put in a bag and taken away, ladies and gentlemen. And we all thought that that sack on Santa's back was filled with presents for all those good boys and girls. Oh no, folks. That bag is used to kidnap the children, dear listeners. Kidnap. Other namesakes for this entity is Belsnickel, a scary, darker Christmas visitor in the southwest of Germany and amongst German-speaking communities in the United States was Belsnickel, also known as Belsnickel, Belsnickel, and Pelznickel. The name literally translates as Walloping Nicky, or he is a Nicholas that hits or thumps. Because of this, some say he is a version of Saint Nicholas, and also because while Nicholas is the name of the saint, there are also examples of the name Nicholas being used for the devil. And Old Nick is a well-known British name for the devil. It seems probable that this name is derived from the Dutch Nikken, or the devil. Mystery School associate Adam Sandler has an entitled movie called Little Nicky, and it is about the son of Satan, named Little Nicky. Belsnickel is crotchety, grumpy, and very scary, particularly for children who have been bad. At his most fearsome, he would appear at the door dressed in tatty furs with a long white beard, rattling chains and branches of birch against the window until let in. Once he entered the house, he would enter the house and would be able to sense which children had been bad. Bad children would be hit with a switch or a belt of some kind and made to perform a song and dance and promise to be good. Belsnickel would reward the children with gifts of candies, fruit, and cookies. Thus, Belsnickel could serve the role of both Santa Claus and Krampus at the same time. According to legend, Santa magically appeared in the Netherlands around the 17th century. During this time, Sinterklaas, also known as Santa Claus, was officially born. Dutch children began the tradition of placing their shoes by the fireplace on December 5 for the mystic 4th century bishop, St. Nicholas. And a note, in the Dutch language, St. Nicholas is Sint Nicolaas, which shortened to Sinterklaas, of which would later become Santa Claus. The next morning, the gleeful Dutch children quickly awoke to gifts and goodies in their shoes left by Sinterklaas. Like today's Santa, Sinterklaas miraculously traveled from housetop to housetop and entered through the chimney. The question that many have is how come Santa Claus is not simply represented as Saint Nick? How or why has he become this stout, jovial fellow wearing red and white with a long white beard? Well, the problem is that many historians claim that Saint Nick never existed in the first place. And his happy attitude and white hair and beard, etc.? Well, Clement Clark Moore wrote a poem in 1823 called A Visit from St. Nick, better known today as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. That's cemented in our history this jovial, rosy-cheeked, overweight gift giver. But let me point something else out from this poem. Quote, his droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. And I want to quote from the Bible, Revelations 1:13-14. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow. In the same exact sentence, folks. Maybe this is where Clement got this from. Now, without making this presentation too long, I'd like to point out that Clement Moore, just like mystery school agent Charles Dickens, author of A Christmas Carol, comes from a very prominent, wealthy family, in fact, one of the first families to settle in Manhattan. And from my experience, it is these people that time and time again, these early leaders, these prominent families, that always seem to have been in on it. I trust little, very little, from our historical record and popular culture, ladies and gentlemen. In my opinion, folks, it looks like Mr. Moore was perpetuating the narrative being set by the mystery schools in their attempt, just as they did with Constantine and the Nicaea Council, to co-opt the official story. Many plays during the Middle Ages touched upon this person known as Saint Nick or Santa Claus, and a tagline apparently used by the devil came into existence, and it was again noted in 1997 by Phyllis Seifker in Santa Claus, Last of the Wild Men, The Origins and Evolution of St. Nicholas, where it is pointed out that the phrase ho, ho, ho was known as the devil's bluster, as it was used each time the devil appeared in these plays. And those of you who are familiar with the occult or Satanism or Luciferianism understand anagrams and how they are used. The letters in Santa are easily rearranged into the word Satan. The rearranging of letters, called anagrams, to hide secret names or words has long been practiced in the occult. The Jewish Encyclopedia writes of the Jewish occult book called the Kabbalah. And so since we are on the subject of anagrams, what about Klaus? Is Klaus another anagram for Lucas? It's no secret Lucas and Lucis are New Age code words for Lucifer. The Alice Bailey founded New Age occult publishing company was originally named Lucifer Publishing Company, but in 1924 the name was cleverly changed to Lucis Trust. And by the way, the Lucifer worshipping Lucis Trust is a major player in the works of the United Nations, formerly located in the United Nations building, but now located on primetime 1200 Wall Street. Remember Father Christmas, as Santa is sometimes known? In Claude Levi Strauss's popular essay of Father Christmas, he has a line that says, quote, Father Christmas is dressed in scarlet. He is a king. His white beard, his furs, and his boots, the sleigh in which he travels, evokes winter. He is called Father. and he is an old man. Thus he incarnates the benevolent form of the authority of the ancients. Now I'd like to show you another quote now from Daniel 7:9 that describes the Lord Jesus as the Ancient of Days with white hair, like the pure wool. Quote, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. And folks, it's almost as though there are two competing narratives, one by the Christians who portray Santa Claus as good and almost analogous to God, while the saint and sun worshippers seem to, in an occultic way, push Santa and Christmas towards hidden, more sinister meanings. And this is also the first time we see Santa wearing red, or scarlet, as Levi Strauss put it in Father Christmas. Have you ever wondered why Santa wears red? Me too. And let's see if we can find out. In the famous Christmas song, Must Be Santa, written by Hal Moore and Bill Fredericks, and first released in November 1960, then redone by Bob Dylan, says, quote, who wears boots in a suit of red? Santa wears boots in a suit of red. Cap on his head, suit that's red, special night, beard that's white. Must be Santa, must be Santa, must be Santa, Santa Claus. Now again from the Bible, Isaiah 63, 1-2. Who is this that cometh from Edom, with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat? And how about from Revelations 19:12-14? Quote, his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his head wore many crowns. And he had a name written, that no man knew but himself. And he was clothed with vesture dipped in blood. And his name is called the Word of God, end quote. And of course, we all know about blood and the intoxicating properties found in it, especially in children. And the stories in history going back thousands of years having to do with blood sacrificing and other rituals concerning blood. And we won't go any further into this as we want this video to stay online. One final thing on Christmas, one thing which I'm sure everyone listening will be able to agree upon, and that is the materialistic event that Christmas has seemed to become. I did a scientific experiment for this presentation, and I asked 10 children, ages 3 to 15, what they liked about Christmas, what Christmas is about to them. And every single one of them said that in one form or another that it is all about receiving gifts. 9 out of 10 commercials during the season is all about buying these material items for Christmas. Christmas loans, maxing out credit cards, stressing. Children coveting and being brainwashed into expecting any item that they dream of, only to be eventually disappointed in many cases when a parent cannot get a particular item, and so then there's the letdown, the sadness, the victim mentality sets in. Why do you think that the suicide rate is the highest during the holidays? What exactly even is this supposed holiday? Do you know the forces that benefit the most from Christmas? And it's not even close. The commerce robber barons, the corporatocracy that is in control, are the main beneficiaries of this holiday, where millions of Americans go into serious debt, taking many months into the following year to get back even, just to do it all over again a few months later, because they believe that this is what they are supposed to do. Yes, dear listeners, I'm afraid that this whole thing, if it was ever anything good, has been completely co-opted, just like everything else good in this world, by those people. Those people that I talk about and call out by name in almost every single presentation. They are demons and are the root of all the problems we have here on this planet, and they need to go. If you enjoyed this presentation, please like, share, and subscribe, and please consider supporting this channel on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thank you for watching, and Merry Christmas.